We had a webinar for February 2nd, on February 2nd, and there was a question submitted about what is absolute happiness. And usually, when we get this question, yeah, we answer, well, absolute happiness cannot be really described. It is something to be experienced because, as the word implies, absolute. So it cannot be captured in finite, limited vocabularies. It's an experience that each one of us will have. And we can understand it by compare and contrasting it with relative happiness. So that's usually how we explain um, relative happiness to help people who are learning the Dharma with us, to help them understand all the happiness they know or rely on is relative, it's compared with others. And because it's contingent on others, it fluctuates so easily. So it's very unstable form of happiness. That means even though we work so hard to find happiness, we keep suffering because the happiness we find, as long as we pursue relative happiness, by nature, it fluctuates so easily. And so in the webinar, they were explaining if we compare ourselves with people above us, like with celebrities perhaps or billionaires, somehow we don't feel very good. We might feel miserable because we don't score well in comparison with them in terms of financial success or popularity, things like that. So if you do that and you make yourself miserable, all you have to do is compare yourself with people who are not as privileged as you are. If we have the capability to compare ourselves with people above us, why don't we use that to also cultivate gratitude when we see how many people out there, they don't have the privileges that we do, and we are taking our fortune, good fortune, for granted. Our blessings, we are taking our blessings for granted. So this is a huge blind spot. And something interesting I heard, I listened to the webinar a few times, and then this time, this one registered on my consciousness that, yeah, many people who read this book, You Were Born for a Reason, they wrote feedback to the authors that, yeah, this book made me very happy because part one of this book actually mentions a lot of sorrowful stories. So usually I tell people this book, if you have, you might not be ready to read it. The part one is can be dark or heavy. But actually in Japan, many people who read it, they felt happy because in comparison with examples in this book, they fared much better. They scored better and they felt happy. So it's very mysterious. So let's read a little bit about chapter one, the fragility of happiness. Get out. Mother ran downstairs and hammered father with her fists, shrieking at him to leave. The sound rings in my ears to this day. As I stood rooted to the spot, father passed wordlessly in front of me and on out the door, never to return. I was in grade school. It was months before I learned the word divorce and understood the sad situation. Through tears, I grasped the hard truth that happiness can collapse and disappear in an instant without the slightest warning. As that boy learned to his sorrow, even the most apparently secure happiness may crumble at any time. Life is uncertain, apt to spring a nasty surprise when we least expect it. What's the point of it all? What is life all about anyway? When we find ourselves shaken out of the lull of routine, standing aghast like the little boy above, questions like these demand serious answers. Bookstores and libraries overflow with stories of people who have overcome all manner of adversity and found happiness through their tenacity and their strength of will. These books encourage us to keep going. Happiness can be yours. Find your passion and follow it, whatever it might be. All of these success stories tell us to keep moving forward step by step. But what direction are we to take and where are we headed? Those answers are not necessarily clear. Okay, up to here for today. So, yeah, I think a lot of people who read these stories, they felt like if their parents didn't get divorced or they didn't have this kind of conflict in the family, then they realized, oh, I've been so fortunate and I didn't know it. They will be able to cultivate gratitude and feel joyful. So this is one of the aspects of relative happiness. And yeah, I was gonna submit a question to Morita Sensei for advanced group session because I think it can be complex too. Because sometimes for some other people, when you read the story, maybe it might remind you of a bitter experience in the past, and it might also bring up sad feelings at the same time. So it can be a little bit confusing. But the point is, at the very end, saying here, so absolute happiness, the happiness that never abandons us, it has something to do with finding out the direction in life we can move forward that enables us to arrive at a place that we look back and say, I'm so glad for everything in my life that brought me here because this happiness that never abandons me is mine now. And if I hadn't suffered that much, I would have never arrived here. So, absolute happiness is such happiness. Okay, good job everyone for being here, practicing together. Today we're going to have our Pure Land class. Every 2 weeks we meet at 4 p.m. Pacific and Morita Senses class at 5 p.m. Pacific, and have a wonderful Thursday. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.